My wife cheated on me with her boss, then coldly convinced her family to lie about the affair, and now she's trying to steal our $500, $0 house and $200, $0 savings in a brutal legal battle that revealed she secretly embezzled $50, $0 from my business. How do I fight this betrayal? I never thought I'd be the guy writing about how my wife, Emily, turned out to be a two-faced, manipulative cheat. Honestly, I always believed we had a good thing going. We married young, she was 25, I was 27, and for years it seemed like we were solid. We had a beautiful house, a decent business, and I genuinely thought we were building a future together. But all of that came crashing down faster than I could process it. It all started subtly. Small things, you know. She'd be on her phone more often than usual, sneaking off into the bedroom when she thought I wasn't looking. She became more irritable, snapping at me over nothing, and she started working late more frequently. I figured she was just busy with her job. She's a marketing executive, always chasing the next big campaign. But then I noticed her phone was password locked all the time, her texts were deleted, and she was acting secretive in a way that didn't add up. One night, I decided to check her phone when she was out with her friends. I didn't plan to invade her privacy, but something about her recent behavior pushed me over the edge. I unlocked her phone, and what I found was like a punch to the gut. There were messages, flirty, suggestive texts, between her and her boss, a man named Mark. They were talking about meeting up after hours, exchanging pictures, and even discussing their secret moments. It was clear they'd been having an affair for a while. I couldn't believe it at first. My mind was racing, trying to process the betrayal. I felt this cold, sinking feeling in my stomach, like everything I believed in, everything I worked for, was a lie. Emily had always been bitchy and dismissive when I brought up her work stress, but I never imagined she'd cheat on me with someone she worked with, especially her boss. The guy's name is Mark. He's older, about 45, with a cocky attitude and a reputation for being a player. I remembered how she'd always defend him, say. He was like a mentor, but now I see that was just her cover story. The next day I confronted her. I waited until she came home from work, my hands trembling. I showed her the messages and her face twisted into this sick, condescending smirk. She tried to brush it off, saying I was paranoid, that I was reading too much into it. She called me crazy, said I was overreacting, and that I had no proof. But I had screenshots saved in my phone and backed up on my laptop. I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of this. Her reaction was infuriating. She looked me in the eye and told me it was just harmless fun, that Mark was just a friend, that I was insecure and jealous. She even had the nerve to accuse me of not trusting her, like I was the problem. But I knew better. I knew this wasn't just about some innocent flirtation. It was about her sneaking around behind my back, betraying everything we built together. That moment, standing there with her cold eyes and her lies pouring out, I felt a mix of shock and anger I'd never experienced before. It was like my entire world was collapsing around me. I'd always prided myself on honesty and loyalty, and now I was faced with the reality that my wife, my partner, had been lying and cheating for who knows how long. It was a brutal blow, cutting deeper than I ever expected. I remember feeling numb, trying to keep my composure, but inside I was boiling. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something, anything, to make her see what she was doing. But I just stood there, silent, watching her smirk and spin her lies. That day marked the beginning of everything falling apart. I didn't say much after that, just told her I needed time to think, and as I walked out of the house, I felt this cold resolve settling in. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, not without a fight. After I confronted Emily, everything changed. The house felt colder, quieter. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. All I kept thinking about was how she had lied to me for months, maybe longer. I started digging into her phone, her emails, her social media. I needed to understand how deep this betrayal went. It wasn't just the affair with Mark, there was more. I found bank statements, secret texts, even deleted emails. She'd been sneaking around, hiding money and lying about her whereabouts. One thing that hit me hard was the way she convinced her family, her mother, her sister, everyone, to lie for her. She told them she and Mark were just friends, that I was overreacting, jealous, insecure. She spun a web of lies so convincing that even her own family believed her. They started calling me paranoid, saying I was making a fuss over nothing. That hurt more than anything. My own family, her own blood, turned against me because she fed them this story about how I was controlling and unreasonable. Meanwhile, Emily was still acting like the victim, crying crocodile tears when she needed to manipulate the situation. She'd say, "I love you, I want to fix this." But behind my back, she was planning her next move. She had her eyes on the house, the savings, everything we worked for. She started talking about divorce, about splitting everything equally, but I knew she was planning something more sinister. I could see the greed in her eyes whenever she mentioned the house or money. The house, our home, was worth about $500,000. I worked my ass off to pay the mortgage to keep everything afloat. She had no job, no real income, but she believed she deserved a cut of everything now. She started hearing lawyers talking about fair division, but I knew her game. She wanted to take everything, our house, our savings, maybe even my business if she could. She'd always been bitchy and entitled, and now her true colors showed even more. The thing is, I had my own suspicions about her finances. She'd always been secretive about her bank accounts and her spending. So I hired a private investigator. It wasn't cheap, but I needed the truth. Turns out, Emily had been embezzling money from my business, about 50 grand over the last year. She'd been siphoning off cash, falsifying receipts, hiding it in secret accounts. She thought she was clever, but I had her dead to rights. When I found out about the embezzlement, I felt a mix of rage and betrayal. She was not only cheating on me emotionally, but stealing from me financially. This was a woman I trusted, who I thought loved me. Instead, she was just using me, her own husband, as a cash cow for her greed and her affair. I couldn't believe how deep her betrayal went. That night, I sat in my office, staring at the evidence on my laptop. I felt exhausted, drained. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. I thought about confronting her again, about calling her out on everything, but part of me wanted to see just how far she'd go. I realized I couldn't just let her walk away with everything. I had to fight back, legally if I had to. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. It was about protecting what I had built. The next day, I started gathering everything: proof of her affair, the embezzled money, her plans to steal the house and savings. I knew I had to be strategic. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in family law and financial disputes. I wanted to prepare for the worst. I also decided to get a forensic accountant involved, to trace every penny she'd taken and to make sure I had all the documentation I needed. Meanwhile, Emily kept up her act, pretending to be the victim. She'd call me crazy, accuse me of invading her privacy, and say I was ruining our marriage over little misunderstandings. But I knew better. I knew she was lying, scheming, and trying to manipulate everyone around her. It was like watching someone slowly unravel, and I had front row seats. I was furious but also hurt. I'd never thought she could be this cold, this calculating. I felt like I'd been played for a fool all these years. The woman I loved, the woman I married, was not who I thought she was. She was a liar, a thief, and a cheat. And I was determined to fight for what's mine: our house, our savings, and the truth. I wasn't going down without a fight. The legal battle that followed was like nothing I ever imagined. I thought I knew what I was up against, but it turned out Emily had more tricks up her sleeve than I thought possible. She hired her own lawyer, of course, and she started spinning stories that painted her as the wronged wife, a victim of my suspicion and controlling nature. She claimed I was paranoid, that I'd been spying on her, and that she was just trying to get through a rough patch. I could see through her lies immediately, but it was exhausting to counter her every word. Meanwhile, her family continued to support her, even after I handed over the evidence of her affair and the embezzlement. Her mother, Patricia, was especially hard to deal with. She kept insisting Emily was innocent, that I was overreacting, and that I should forgive her. Her sister, Jessica, was no better. She called me paranoid and told me I was ruining Emily's reputation. It was infuriating because I knew they'd been convinced by her lies, but I also knew I had to stay calm. Losing my temper wouldn't help. I had to play it smart. I pushed for a court order to freeze Emily's assets and to get a forensic audit of her bank accounts. I wanted to prove she'd been stealing from me and to prevent her from draining the house or savings before the case was settled. The process was slow, frustrating, and emotionally draining. Every day I felt like I was fighting a battle on two fronts, one legal, one emotional. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on Emily's movements. I needed to know if she was planning to run or hide assets. During this time, I uncovered more about her secret financial dealings. She opened a hidden account, probably to hide more stolen money. I found evidence that she'd been trying to transfer funds out of the country through offshore accounts, thinking she could escape with everything. That discovery made my blood boil. I realized she was willing to do anything to keep her lifestyle, her house, her money, her affair. It was around this point that I learned she'd been lying to her own family about the true extent of her betrayal. She insisted she was innocent, that she was only trying to fix things, even as she secretly planned her next move. It was clear she was trying to manipulate everyone, including her own mother and sister, into believing her sob story. I couldn't believe how cold and calculating she'd become. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted. I'd trusted her with everything, my business, my home, my heart, and now I was fighting to keep what's mine. Every night I'd lie awake wondering how I got here, how I let it happen. I kept replaying the signs I missed, the moments I thought were normal but were actually warning signs. I kept asking myself if I could have done something differently to see this coming. Despite all the chaos, I knew I had to stay focused. I couldn't let her win. I started documenting everything, every conversation, every financial transaction, every suspicious activity. I wanted irrefutable proof, and I was determined to get it. I also started planning how I'd rebuild my life if I had to. The house, the business, the savings, all of it was at stake, and I refused to let her take it from me without a fight. One of the hardest moments came when Emily's lawyer filed a motion claiming I was harassing her, trying to undermine her reputation, and that I was trying to control her. It was a blatant lie, but it made me realize how far she was willing to go to manipulate the system. I knew I had to be even more careful, more strategic. I couldn't let her spin the story to make herself look innocent. I had to be the one with the facts, the evidence, the truth. As I sat in the courtroom, I felt a strange mix of determination and despair. I knew this wasn't just about the house or the money anymore. It was about justice, about making sure she couldn't get away with everything she'd done. I looked at her across the courtroom, her bitchy smirk trying to mask her guilt, and I realized I wasn't going to lose. Not without a fight. I had everything to lose, but I also had everything to gain: my integrity, my future, and the truth. The courtroom battles were exhausting, but they revealed even more of Emily's deception. Every hearing, every motion, seemed to peel back another layer of her lies. I had hired a forensic accountant, and their report was devastating. Emily had embezzled that 50 grand from my business, yes, but she also had a trail of hidden accounts, offshore transfers, and shell companies set up to siphon money away. She thought she was so clever, hiding all her tracks, but the evidence was overwhelming. What made it worse was how she started turning her family against me. Emily's mother, Patricia, was still insisting I was overreacting, claiming I was paranoid and controlling. Jessica, her sister, started spreading rumors about how I was accusing Emily of things she didn't do. It was like a coordinated attack to discredit me, to make me look like the villain in all of this. But I had the proof. I had bank statements, emails, witness statements. I was prepared to fight fire with fire. Meanwhile, Emily was busy trying to manipulate the legal process. She filed for a temporary restraining order, claiming I was harassing her and threatening her safety. It was a total fabrication, but she knew how to play the victim. Her lawyer argued that I was trying to ruin her reputation and that she needed protection. It was a classic move, and honestly, I felt sick watching her use the system this way. But I had my own legal team, and we countered effectively, showing her pattern of deception and financial misconduct. Throughout all this, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of betrayal. I'd given her everything: my trust, my love, my business, and she'd used me. She'd lied to her family, manipulated her way through the system, and tried to steal our house and savings. The house, by the way, is worth around $500,000, and I was prepared to fight tooth and nail to keep it. It's not just a building. It's the home we built together, the place I thought was my safe haven. Now I saw it differently, just a prize she wanted to take from me. Her legal team pushed for a quick settlement, trying to get her a quick divorce and a fair share of the assets. But I refused. I knew she was planning to drain the house and the savings before the case was over. I also had evidence that she'd been trying to sell off parts of the property secretly. I couldn't let her walk away with everything, especially after everything she'd done. I wanted full disclosure, a fair settlement, and justice. The most surreal moment was when Emily, in her courtroom testimony, tried to deny everything, claimed she was innocent, that I had no proof, and that she was the real victim. She looked me dead in the eyes and lied outright. I sat there, watching her spin her web of deception, and I felt this strange mixture of anger and pity. She's so good at lying that she even convinced some of her own family. But I knew the truth. I had the evidence, and I was ready to fight for it. I also learned that she'd been trying to convince her mother and sister to lie for her, to say she was innocent and that I was the one causing trouble. She'd even gone as far as trying to get her family to testify against me, saying I was abusive, controlling, and that I'd been threatening her. Of course, none of that was true. I never raised a hand to her, never threatened her. All I wanted was honesty and fairness, but she was hell-bent on destroying me. It's funny how quickly everything changed. Just a few months ago, I thought I had a partner for life. Now, I see her for what she truly is, a manipulative, greedy, two-faced woman who's willing to destroy everything we built if it meant getting her way. I can't tell you how much it hurts to see the woman I love turn into this monster, but I also know I have to stand my ground. I can't let her win, not after everything. I've put so much into this house, into my business, into my life, and I refuse to let her walk away with it all. I've been through hell, but I'm not done fighting yet. The next steps will be even more intense, but I'm prepared. I've got the evidence, the legal backing, and a resolve I never knew I had. She's not going to get away with this. Not without a fight. The legal process dragged on, and each new hearing uncovered more of Emily's schemes. I thought I had seen her worst, but every time she'd come back with a new lie or manipulation, I realized just how far she was willing to go. She'd been secretly transferring money out of our accounts, trying to hide assets, and even attempting to sell parts of the house behind my back. It was like fighting a ghost. She kept slipping through my fingers, trying to outsmart me at every turn. One of the most shocking things I uncovered was her attempt to secretly set up a new offshore account in the Caribbean, supposedly to protect her assets. She'd been talking with some shady financial advisors, trying to move money out of reach. I had my forensic accountant trace every transfer, and it all led back to her. That was the moment I realized she was willing to do anything, to lie, cheat, steal, and manipulate to get what she wanted. Her lawyer kept pushing for a quick divorce, claiming she was ready to move on and that I was trying to drag things out. But I knew better. I wasn't going to let her walk away with a penny more than she deserved, especially after the way she'd betrayed me. I pushed for full disclosure of all her assets, her bank accounts, her hidden money, and her plans to escape with our house and savings. I had to make sure she didn't leave me with nothing. At one point, Emily's lawyer tried to get a court order to prevent me from seeing our financial records, claiming I was harassing her. It was a blatant attempt to hide her tracks, but I fought back hard. I had the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, witness testimonies, and I made sure the court saw everything. I was determined to expose her lies and prove her financial misconduct. Meanwhile, her family continued to support her, even as the evidence piled up against her. Her mother, Patricia, refused to believe Emily was capable of such deception, insisting she was just confused or under stress. Jessica, her sister, started spreading rumors that I was trying to control Emily, trying to turn friends and family against me. It was infuriating, but I stayed focused. I knew the truth, and I knew I had to stay the course. The emotional toll was immense. Every court date, every new revelation felt like a punch to the stomach. I loved Emily once, still do, in some twisted way, and it's heartbreaking to realize that the woman I married was capable of this level of betrayal. I felt betrayed, angry, and deeply hurt. But beneath all that, I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I was finally seeing her for who she really was. One night, after a long day in court, I sat in my home office, staring at the evidence I'd collected. I thought about all the years we spent building this life, our house, our business, our savings, and how she had tried to destroy it all. I knew I couldn't let her, not without a fight. I started drafting a detailed plan to protect my assets, to ensure she wouldn't get away with her schemes, and to prepare for the final battle. I also realized I had to be prepared for her next move. Emily was cunning, and I knew she wouldn't give up easily. She'd try to spin even more lies, maybe try to turn the court against me, or even attempt to disappear with the house. I couldn't let that happen. I had to stay vigilant, keep gathering evidence, and stay one step ahead. What's more, I started thinking about what I'd do if I won this fight. I'd be free from her manipulations, but I'd also need to rebuild. Trusting someone again after all this feels impossible right now. But I've learned one thing: never ignore the warning signs. Never assume someone's loyalty is forever. And most of all, never let someone else's greed and lies destroy what you've worked so hard for. I'm not quite at the end of this battle yet, but I can see the finish line. The truth is on my side, and I'm determined to see this through. Emily's schemes are unraveling, and I'll make damn sure she pays for every lie, every betrayal, and every dollar she stole. I built this life, my house, my business, and I intend to keep what's mine, no matter what it takes. The final court date was the most intense day of all. I had everything prepared, every piece of evidence, every witness statement, every financial record. Emily's lies had been laid bare, and her attempts to manipulate the court had failed spectacularly. Her lawyer looked frantic, trying to spin one last story, but the judge wasn't buying it. The forensic accountant testified, confirming her embezzlement and hidden accounts. My lawyer laid out the full scope of her betrayal, and by the end it was clear she had no way out. When the judge finally delivered the verdict, I felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. She ordered Emily to pay back every cent she stole, to surrender her claim to the house, and to cover all legal costs. The house, our home, was awarded back to me, free and clear. I watched as Emily's face drained of color, her bitchy smirk replaced with shock and rage. She'd lost everything she tried to manipulate her way into: her lies, her schemes, her greed. In the aftermath, I started the long process of healing. I sold the offshore accounts and recovered most of the stolen money. The house was mine, and I moved into a new apartment, leaving the nightmare behind. I cut ties with her family, who refused to see the truth, and focused on rebuilding my life. I knew I'd be wary of trusting again, but I also knew I'd come out of this stronger. Emily's legal battle to try and keep some of the assets continued briefly, but it was futile. The evidence was too overwhelming. She ended up with a hefty fine for embezzlement, and her reputation was ruined. She tried to twist the story, claiming she was the victim of my paranoia, but nobody bought it anymore. She was exposed as a liar, a thief, and a manipulator. Her attempts to spin the story only made her look worse. Looking back, I realize how much I learned from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and betrayal cuts deeper than any wound. I lost a partner I thought I knew, but I also gained clarity about who truly mattered. The house, the business, the savings, they're just things. What matters is honesty, loyalty, and integrity. I'll never let someone like Emily get away with tearing all that down again. To anyone out there dealing with betrayal, I'd say this: gather your proof, stay calm, and fight for what's right. Don't let anyone manipulate or steal from you. Stand your ground. It's hard and the pain lingers, but in the end, truth and justice will prevail. I've lost a lot, but I've also gained a hard-earned lesson. Never ignore the signs, never trust blindly, and always fight to protect what's yours. Because sometimes, the biggest betrayal isn't just an affair or a lie. It's losing everything you worked so hard for to someone who never deserved it in the first place.